What's up, you guys? Mo Awesome from Awesome MTB. Welcome to the channel and welcome to, I think, my favorite bike review of the year. Today we're going to be talking about the Cannondale Lefty Carbon Ocho. This has actually been a fork that I've been testing out over the last month or two. I have been absolutely in love with this thing. It's been one of those products where I truly think I absolutely need this thing on all of my bikes. The performance gains have been insane, and on top of that, I just look at it and I want to ride my bike. I also get a lot of questions when I'm out on the trails. Just a cool piece of equipment to have on my bike. I don't think I've been so stoked on a piece of mountain bike equipment in a very long time. But what is the Cannondale Lefty Ocho? So obviously it's a fork with one leg. I think everyone knows that about Cannondale. That's kind of their thing. And a lot of times when people see a Cannondale bike and it doesn't have a lefty, the first thing that they'll say to you out on the trails is, oh, your fork has both legs. So I'm happy that I finally have a Cannondale with a lefty on here. Now the lefty isn't proprietary to Cannondale bikes. You can actually run this lefty on any XC bike. Now this lefty has 120 millimeters of travel, and I do have a remote lockout on here. For the remote lockout, I actually went with a 2-position twist lock from Rockshox, which I find to be the best remote lockout on the market right now. Now there is two versions of the lefty. I have the carbon version, so it's very light. I can actually put the weight right here of just the fork itself. Kind of looks like a fish picture, and the fork is also inverted as well. So as you guys can tell, these stanchions are on the bottom. Cool thing is there is a dirt guard on the lefty, and it actually works really well. I'll put a photo up. It's actually been kind of misty in the mornings here in SoCal, and you can tell that dirt guard works really well. Now, what is the biggest thing that separates the lefty from other forks on the market besides it only having one leg? I feel like that's a given. The biggest thing is that unlike other forks that use bushings, this actually has a needle bearing setup in here, and that's what contributes to the smoothness out on the trails. Now we're going to touch on that a little bit later on, but I will say that is probably the most drastic performance difference. Now, even though the fork itself isn't proprietary, you can't just use any wheel set. You do have to have a Cannondale Lefty front hub. As you guys can tell down here, the axle is also a little bit different. Essentially, to take off the front wheel, you do have to disconnect the brake caliper. So it's actually a lever switch down here. It's super simple. You basically pop that and the caliper just pops right off. And then you can go to the other side with a 5mm, I believe, and then you could just unthread that. And then essentially the front wheel will come off. The axle will actually still be connected to the fork. Once again, I believe it is one continuous piece. You can't just throw this fork on any wheel set. You do need a Cannondale Lefty front hub. I am absolutely in love with the Cannondale Lefty, and it has been my favorite piece of mountain bike equipment that I have tested in the last years. I mean, it's been so long since I've been so in love with an MTB product like this. Before we get into what I absolutely love about this fork, and also some things that you might want to know before purchasing a Cannondale Lefty, let's actually take this thing out on the trail so you guys can see how this rips out in Laguna. And I also want to give a huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video and a Cannondale Lefty stocking dealer, and that is Jensen USA.
If you didn't know, Jensen USA is one of the largest online bike shops out there, and they are incredible. They have so many bikes and parts in stock ready to ship to you with same-day shipping. Their prices are incredible, and their customer service is second to none. They are rider-owned and have been around for 30 years, so they know how important it is to not only get the best deals, but also keep the time off the bike to a minimum. So like I said, they offer same-day shipping, and their customer service is backed by gear advisors to help make picking the right item or bike out very simple. And like I said, the prices are insane, some of the best deals in the industry, and they also have a really rad Corona store location. In that Corona store location, there are so many insane deals on bikes going on right now, and it's super cool to also have a physical location to complement their awesome website. I know some people are a little bit more comfortable checking out bikes in person, and yeah, that Corona location is absolutely awesome if you ever want to check it out.
Once again, we can't recommend Jensen USA enough. Not only are they a huge Cannondale dealer, but they have some of the best deals in the nation. And in today's market, it's not only important to get the best deal, but also to have amazing customer service backing that best deal. We'll go ahead and link them in the description of this video. Huge thank you, Jensen USA, for sponsoring this video. And with that being said, let's go ride the Cannondale Lefty out here in Laguna. All right, guys, so we're hitting the trails with the Lefty to show you guys how this thing does out there. Now, the first thing I want to do, this is a weird test for you guys. I'm going to take my hands off of the bars. This is actually something that I was kind of curious what's going to happen. As you guys can tell, pretty stable. It's not like I'm just leaning all the way left. No hands going on right now. And as you can tell, I could do it. This was actually a test that I was curious about what was going to happen the first time I tried it. Not going to lie, I was nervous. It doesn't flop to the left. And that's the craziest thing. I still don't fully understand how this fork works. But yeah, as you guys can tell, no-handed, able to ride the bike with the Lefty. The other thing is wheelies. The problem is I have a Fox transfer, so it's only 2 positions, so my seat post is all the way up. Let me get in a good gear for you guys. I would actually say the biggest limiting factor here is the 2-position dropper post, because I can wheelie perfectly fine. I'm just all the way, seats all the way up right now because I have that Fox transfer 2-position. But as you can tell, I can also wheelie. This is another place where people are gonna have questions about is climbing. And I would actually say the weight difference was very noticeable. I feel like the front end, a little bit easier to keep down. And on top of that, I love the weight saving up there. And it's so precise. I feel like I can put the front end exactly where I want to. Loving the Lefty on climbs. All right, and we have definitely not been taking it easy on the Lefty in testing. This is a trail called Five Oaks, and I want to show you guys just how plush and stiff this thing is. It has been so smooth on this chatter. You can tell a substantial difference over the previous Sid I was testing on here and some other bikes. And once again, I am in love with the whole bearing system over bushings. You can actually feel a difference. And this is the biggest part right here. Trail chatter is just so much smoother with the Lefty. I feel like this bike was already one of my favorites, the Scalpel, and the Lefty has only made it that much better. Coming into here, this is where the precision comes into play. A little bit of a huck, no issues for the Lefty. I have been treating this bike like an all mountain rig. It's crazy how capable XC has gotten. The Lefty is just one of those forks where it lets you put the front end exactly where you want to. It's just so precise. And man, definitely loving it. It's crazy too, because if you look down, yeah, it looks a little weird, but as long as you focus on riding, the performance gains are pretty insane on this thing. I would actually say the only thing holding me back at this point, I feel like I just need a little bit more powerful brakes. I think the motives are supposed to be more powerful, but I feel like the Lefty has made the Scalpel that much more capable. Hill action for you guys. And once again, not only does the front end feel nice and plush, plenty of traction, but that precision, I can't emphasize that enough. I feel like I could put that front end just exactly where I want it. Once again, I know there's some weight savings there, but I do feel like there's something to the Lefty just being such a precise fork that it just feels, I mean, I've compared it back to back with the Sid Ultimate, which has the same kind of weight range, and I still feel like the Lefty is more precise. Maybe I'll try and cut the other half of that Sid off, see if we get the same benefits. All right, now we're heading to the Rocket Rock Garden. So much chunk on this trail, as well as flow. And once again, I can't get over the suppleness of this fork. Traction's pretty insane, especially given the Recon tires. And man, the Scalpel has such a good pep in its step. Trying to keep this a little bit more about the fork though. Once again, the stiffness, I mean, you can feel it. It feels stiffer, and that doesn't make sense because there's half a fork. I still don't fully understand the physics of it, but we're in the rock garden to show you guys just how the Lefty does. Oh my God, so much suppleness. Probably the best feeling fork I've tested out. And it's crazy that it's an XC fork, which makes you wonder, how would the long travel version of this fork pan out? Probably would be insane. Lefty engineers, if you're watching this, we need to get that back in production because you guys have this fork dialed right now. And right now, the only thing holding me back, like I said, I feel like ever since I put the Lefty on, combine that with how much I love the Scalpel, this bike goes so fast. I just need to put some more powerful brakes. We got this little climb right here. Precision, exactly where I want the front of the bike, so good. Couple of more good corners out here. Another thing I like is the support in and out of corners. In addition to that traction with all those kind of braking bumps here, I would say it's a very supportive fork, and it just lets you kind of push off stuff a little bit more. So absolutely loving it. How lucky are we, guys? The year is 2025 and XC parts are the lightest they've ever been, and on top of that, the bikes are the most capable they've ever been. This is an insane time to be a mountain biker. Get some speed out here. So good. It is insane how capable this fork feels. Through the ruts, just so much tracking from the Lefty. You can feel it. The bike feels like it tracks so much better up front. Fork, I'm putting it on all my bikes. It is way too good. Now that you guys have seen how this fork performs, let's go back and talk about it. All right, you guys, hopefully you enjoyed that shred on the Cannondale Lefty out here in Laguna. Like you guys saw, I have not been holding back from thrashing this Lefty, and it has absolutely blown me away, not only by how plush it feels, but by how stiff and precise. First thing I want to talk about is the smoothness, because like I said, this has probably been one of the smoothest feeling forks, especially on chatter. A lot of that is going to have to do with the bearings versus bushings in the fork, but on top of that, I think what's also contributing to the smoothness is it being one leg. Kind of all of that force is going onto that one leg, so making it a little bit easier to compress on there, and then those bearings themselves, instead of the bushings, have a very smooth feel in terms of actuation, and you get that super smooth feeling out on the trails. Like you guys saw, the traction on this thing is pretty insane, and I was constantly blown away by how smooth the Lefty made the trail feel. We're talking 120mm XC bike, and this thing absolutely was ripping out here in Aliso. We have so many braking bumps right now. The trails are super dry, but I was thoroughly impressed by the Lefty and how it constantly made me feel like my recons had more traction than they did out here on the trails. I'm very impressed by how smooth this fork felt. Another thing that I absolutely love about the Lefty is the stiffness as well as the precision. This has been one of the most precise fork I've tried out on the trails. What I'm talking about in terms of precision is anytime I'm kind of going through chatter or just kind of going through the chunk, it feels like the front end is exactly where I'm putting it and it's not moving at all. Where when I'm testing out like a fork like the Sid feels like there's just kind of a little bit of flex built into the fork, and you can tell, especially when things start to get even chunkier. It's still a very comfortable fork as well as stiff. However, this just feels that much more precise. Now, does it have something to do with this fork being on one side with the bearings, and it's kind of like that one-piece system, and there's not two fork legs and bushings where kind of things are kind of swaying a little bit? Maybe.
So I looked into this further, and my hunch about the bearings was correct. So as you guys can tell from this diagram, so this was actually from the old days, the kind of the older dual crown Lefties, and basically what you're seeing is how the bearings are packed. So now it's actually a 3-needle bearing pack, but they're still sandwiched between the upper and lower tubes. So as you guys can tell in the diagram, that's what's preventing that unwanted flex you get with traditional forks, and that's that stiffness and precision that I'm feeling. So yeah, huge shout out to the Lefty engineers for explaining that to me, but super cool system.
Once again, we're talking about a carbon fork that is only on one side with 120 mils of travel. However, I would say this has probably been one of the stiffest forks I've tested out on the trails, and that combination with that smooth travel is absolutely mind-blowing. I feel like it really helps the steering of this bike. It kind of feels like a scalpel knife out. See what I did there? That was a pun that was definitely not intended. It just feels so precise out on the trails, and I feel like I'm able to kind of carve in and out of sections and put that front end of the bike exactly where I want it, and there's no movement or twitching me off of my line. I've been thoroughly impressed by the stiffness as well as the precision, especially in chunky terrain. Another thing that I absolutely love about this fork is going to be tire clearance as well as mud clearance. As you guys can tell, there's not much room for mud to cake up anywhere. So if I was to go somewhere muddy, I really do like the fact that, I mean, that's the tough thing with XC bikes. Normally tire clearance is limiting. Not much concern there. And on top of that, you can fit bigger tires on here. Now, the last thing that I absolutely love about this fork, and this is going to be probably the most superficial. It might sound silly to a few people, but this is actually probably why I will be speccing Lefties on my future XC bikes. And that's the fact that this thing just looks awesome. You look at your bike and you just want to ride. It just looks super unique. It looks special. It looks different. When you're out on the trails, it's kind of a conversation starter. Everyone wants to look at your bike. They ask you questions. And it's just been one of those things where if you look at your bike and it stokes you out, you're more motivated to ride. I do think I am going to be putting this Lefty on a few other XC bikes of mine. I feel like that's going to motivate me to take those bikes out. Now, in terms of some drawbacks, even though I personally didn't experience anything service-wise, I put a lot of miles on this fork now, and I've really been abusing it, as you guys can tell, out here in Laguna. It's super dusty and chunky. And yeah, I've really been trying to put this thing through paces. I haven't had any issues. Obviously, this isn't gonna be a fork that you could just take into any bike shop to have them do the full service. You do have to find a Cannondale service center or send it back to Cannondale. In terms of getting service on your fork, it might be a little bit trickier. Once again, I put a lot of miles on this thing, really been trying to abuse it. Haven't had any issues, but that is something to point out there. The thing's gonna be hub compatibility. If you do have an XC wheel set that you wanna use, you will have to get a different front hub. So that's another thing to point out there as well. And one last thing, I don't think many people are going to be dealing with this issue, but for us personally, we have to put our bikes in and out of the van every day. If you do have to take your front wheel off to put it inside of your vehicle, once again, you are going to have to press this quick release, detach the caliper, and then take the front wheel off. It's a little bit more of a process, and on top of that, if you do have fork mounts, you might not necessarily be able to use the Cannondale Lefty, but that is something that if you do use fork mounts, you might want to check compatibility. But other than that, not too much things I don't absolutely love about the Cannondale Lefty. This has been a fork that I can't recommend enough, especially if you're trying to find that piece of equipment that not only is probably the best feeling, but also one of those things that you look at and makes you want to ride your bike. I just think aesthetically it looks amazing. Physically, I still don't understand how it's physically possible. And then also performance-wise, it feels amazing out on the trails. I've actually felt a noticeable difference between this and the Sid Ultimate. I like this way more than I like the Sid Ultimate. I like the Sid Ultimate a lot, so that fork is still an amazing fork. However, I just think this feels smoother, it feels plusher, and once again, it just makes me, I look at it and I'm like, I want to go ride my bike. Huge shout out to Cannondale for making this fork possible. Once again, physics-wise, I'm not entirely sure how this thing is possible, but I'm so happy to have been able to test it. So huge thank you to them. Huge thank you to Jensen USA for sponsoring this video. We'll leave a link to Jensen USA in the description of this video, as well as a link to the Lefty. They are a stocking dealer. And if you guys have any other questions about the Cannondale Lefty, be sure to let us know in the comment section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, you guys, ride awesome.